This is my damage in hardcore day 2 gear with a suboptimal tree. We're talking no awakened gems, no alt qualities, and I believe it's one of the most efficient builds for this entire league. My Poison Molten Strike Assassin is truly a well-rounded beast. We're talking stun immune, ailment immune, great fizz damage reduction, solid clear, and of course, insane single target damage. For hardcore at least. Now, Pneumatic Molten Strike isn't a new build. Notably, Garotha's made a really extensive guide on this in previous leagues, and I haven't watched it, but yeah, I can definitely trust him as far as builds go. He's brilliant. But this league has made this build significantly more powerful. First of all, with the introduction of Tanu Ahi, secondly, with new access to nodes on the tree, and thirdly, and most importantly, the Vengeance Cascade Anoint, which allows attack projectiles to return to you. This more than doubles your damage for Molten Strike. Now, one of the huge things for this build not to go unnoticed is the efficiency of support gems. Most builds run support gems giving you somewhere in the range of 30 to 40% more damage. Because Poison Molten Strike scales projectile count and also attack speed, but doesn't suffer from penalties that are hit based specifically, it's very, very efficient. Multi-strike alone gives me 76% more damage. Unbound ailments is 55% more because poison builds are OP. Greater multiple projectiles is also 55% more, improves your clear, and would be even stronger if I wasn't running an enchant for Molten Strike on my helmet. And finally, Immolate is a 51% multiplier that's enabled by Pneumatic Dagger. Basically, support gems for this are crazy efficient. I mean, I'm almost at dot cap in hardcore this early in the league. Honestly, this shit's insane. But maybe the most insane part of my build is the choice of Ascendancy, I suppose. A lot of people have been questioning this. But you know what? This is actually the rank 1 Assassin build. I'm level 97. And the reason I pick Assassin is basically because of two things. Firstly, the obvious one, damage. It gives you a ton of damage, it gives you poison chance, which is kind of annoying to get even on this build. But the second thing is that opportunistic is kind of an underrated node. As long as you know the things that can one-shot you from specific monsters, this gives you a really useful form of mitigation. So this sort of thing pops off in multi-boss, Maven invitations when you're getting swarmed by rare monsters doing Crucible encounters. Not that I really do those anyway. And when you don't have that, it's still a 25% more damage multiplier. It's a clean node. Assassin is really well balanced. Now obviously Pathfinder is the other primary choice you might go for this. Champ is also really good. The reason I don't go for Pathfinder in my setup specifically is because it's early on in the league and I'm on hardcore trade. So my access to things like Purity of Elements Conversion, Watcher's Eyes, Taste of Hate, a good Dawnbreaker is much more limited. Now if I was playing this in softcore trade, I probably would consider going Pathfinder if you want to deeply invest, because then your build can definitely approach invincibility and you won't suffer as much from damage because you can use all quality gems and you can use awakened gems, which are even more powerful than my current supports. Now the most important thing about my actual tree itself is this glorious vanity. Assassin doesn't have a base source of wither, so instead I look for a glorious vanity with Ritual of Shadows on any of these nodes. I specifically have it here, and this allows you to apply wither. When you're attacking so many times with Molten Strike, I think I have, somewhere in the range of 20 to 22 balls per attack, 9 attacks per second, you're instantly stacking 15 withers. I also have a PDR node down here, and then over here I have Temple Paths for some suppression. Not really important, but this is nice to grab because it also gives me the mana reservation efficiency mastery. As far as the rest of the tree goes, fairly standard for this part. Chaos damage, life, chaos stop multi-scaling, the dagger nodes here. And then Dire Torment, because I'm an assassin, is still quite strong, although you don't take Perfect Agony because scaling for this, especially since Nightblade has been nerfed, is just not that good. Biggest thing about the new tree, multi-shot. So multi-shot is a pretty decent damage node in and of itself, but more importantly, it gives you this mastery for +1 strike skills. This basically allows you to run a glove slot that isn't rare. You don't need the implicit anymore, although I do run Ancestral Call when I'm mapping. In essence, this mastery gives you adrenaline, gives you onslaught because I'm running Tanu Ahi as my gloves. I'm also running a cluster jewel, but this is mostly just to get access to leech and a couple more jewel sockets. These jewels are worth something like 6.5% more damage, and it still gives you life on it. And if you didn't want to do that, there's access to mana leech down here, and then there's life gain on hit nodes over here, which are really, really quite powerful. I'm not sure that this is even worth it, but it's just what I've opted into for now. Honestly, these are also pretty good as far as damage goes. As I'm pathing down, there's more generic nodes here: poison, suppression, life, but most notably, I have adjacent animosity and the less projectile speed mastery. This is really important for Molten Strike. Having reduced projectile speed allows your projectiles from Molten Strike to shotgun much more reliably. This is even more important because Vengeance Cascade has base increased prod speed, so if you don't go for reduced prod speed, your single target will suffer. That exarch clip that you saw at the start of this video, didn't have these nodes, so my damage in there could have been something like 20 to 30% higher even. The other important part of this is thick skin. So thick skin gives you life, which is obviously great for this build, but it also gives you ailment avoidance. This paired with my gear is how I reach ailment immunity, and it's actually really easy to hit. Let's talk about everything. So I have a dagger, a pneumatic. This was essence crafted, looking for 2 damage rolls and attack speed and an open prefix, and then I finished off with a vegan craft. You could also just get 2 prefixes, multi-mod, attack speed, and vegan, but I do think it's really worth using this hits can't be evaded mod. I don't like building accuracy. The Crucible nodes are also really great. That 35% increased attack speed is a local modifier, so that actually roughly says 35% more damage, and then also 20% less damage. In other words, 15% more damage, but it also makes your build feel way better to play, because high attack speed feels great on strike skills. My shield is something that you'd want to harvest craft. You can either reforge elemental or you could also reforge fizz, which is what I would recommend. That allows you to hit fizz DR roughly, I don't know, 1 and 2 or 1 and 3, something like that. And then I'm also looking for avoid ailments. The prefixes on this kind of suck, but I just settled because I'm lazy. The Crucible stuff is actually really cool though. I opted to actually go for that block projectile spell damage, and then with the penalty of losing blocking projectile attacks, because I believe that generally I have enough evasion to dodge most attacks, but this block projectile spell damage pops off in things like Uber Elder and in Maven. My helmet has a really great Molten Strike enchant, giving you something like 20% more damage. Thanks, I'm Exile, for running this for me. And I've also crafted this with an Essence of Loathing, and this really only enables Arctic armor. You could also look for things like Focus Duration of Ailments, but generally this is a pretty flexible slot. Some people might also opt for Fizz taken as the Krell Benchcraft from Betrayal, but because I have a lot of generic PDR, I don't think Fizz taken as is that efficient. I do opt for it on the implicit though, because, you know, why not? I hit it, and I don't want to waste any more currency. The chest piece is another generic piece, although it does have more avoid ailments on here. So 25 from here, 34 from here. I look for things like PDR, an armor roll. You don't necessarily need life, because if you don't land life on here, you could take this life mastery. And then my gloves are Tanu Ahi, which I've already mentioned, really powerful. And when you're hitting as many times as you are with Molten Strike, it has really, really good uptime. Down here, boots. The implicits are the important thing. Both these implicits build towards getting my immunities for stun and element avoidance. I need to change the boot enchant to probably get the elemental damage if you haven't killed recently. And then Ungul's Harmony is generally good for assassin poison builds. This might be outclassed by a really strong rare amulet, especially since it would give you suffixes to get things like resistances, more PDR, maybe a little bit of AoE, but it's a great starter amulet. As far as rings go, these are generic slots. Res, elemental damage with attacks, and then elemental damage to attacks is also okay. And then belt is another flex slot. One thing to note is that across these 3 jewelry pieces, you will need to get 1 pretty big strength roll. This build is a little bit attribute starved, although it does have access to this strength node, and if you don't run Ungils and you don't run a Stygian, you could go for a heavy belt early on. The reason I want to run a Stygian is because, as mentioned, jewels are insane, but I can also run a jewel that gives me a void stun, so this is how I round out that stun immunity. From here, from my boot implicit, also taking Heart of Oak, and then finally the chest craft, which gives you both. In terms of my flask setup, I like to run a double Divine Life flask setup. I think this feels better than anything else. A Jade flask is also kind of good, or an Elemental flask. And then the Surgeon mod, I would probably only run on 1 or 2 flasks. In this case, I'm using it on my Quartz flask, because I think phasing uptime is really powerful in hardcore, and I would almost never play without phasing. Let's go to the skill gems. So I have a lot of flexibility, and the reason I have a lot of flexibility is because I don't have my Divine Blessing set up yet. When I do eventually get it, I'll be running a bunch of alt qualities that don't actually exist. So I need this one over here. I need the alt quality increased duration for anomalous, and then I need to run a alt quality inspiration for divergent. And finally, I'd be able to run anger by switching this out, dropping Arctic armor over here, and then changing this mastery over here to reduce mana cost. And this would make my anger cost only 124 mana, and I would have 163 unreserved. This gem literally doesn't exist on hardcore trade yet, so I'm not doing it. But I just want to clarify why there's so much socket flexibility right now. I guess one thing I could do is Arcanist brand my Temp Chains and Despair, but I personally prefer to just self-cast it, because oftentimes I won't even cast Temp Chains. More importantly, you can actually get Temp Chains as a corrupted implicit on Tanu Hahi, especially on softcore trade where a ton of these gloves exist. I'm a little too lazy about the market, and I'd probably have to do double corrupts because of the supply of these gloves on hardcore. And I opt for Frostbane as my movement skill of choice because this allows you to keep on attacking as you're using your movement skill. Down here I have a Plague Bear and Ink AoE set up. This isn't your entire clear. I would actually encourage you to attack quite often as you're mapping to maintain your onslaught and your adrenaline. And then Blood Rage is really important because this is what enables the degen to use the gloves. Molten Strike has these links. Elemental damage with attacks my last link, but there are other powerful ones. There's a ton of awakened gems that'd be really great, and Deadly Ailments does clock in as being better than Wed, but it would make your leech really gimpy, and I don't really want to do that right now. Just a heads up, never run Elemental Focus if you're gonna run Immolate as well. Obviously, this bricks Immolate. In terms of my aura setup, I'm running Arctic Armor because you do spend some time stationary, just some leftover reservation. And then I'm running Grace, Determination, and Defiance Banner, nothing special. Offensive auras on this would be great. You can opt for them. They're things like Anger, Wrath, Malevolence, even Haste is quite strong. My primary move skill is Whirling Blaze and faster attacks. You could opt for Shield Charge, but the reason I've gone for Whirling Blaze is because my Pneumatic Dagger has that crazy Crucible implicit, so I have a base 2.2 attack speed, so I have a really great Whirling Blades. The attack speed on your weapon wouldn't apply to Shield Charge, so that's why I'm using this. And finally, I have a cast and damage taken Molten Shell, and Ancestral Protector is a little bit of a single target damage buff. It's honestly a really jacked up Molten Shell because on an Assassin, with my gear and my setup, all flashed down, I have 19k armor. So when I click Molten Shell and I'm standing stationary, I can basically tank a Shaper Slam, although I haven't, really tested that because it could go really wrong. I almost forgot to cover leveling. I tried leveling with Spectral Throw, but I really didn't enjoy doing that. I honestly don't know what you level with these days. Peacock is apparently viable if you run a lot of life flasks. But honestly, if I were you, I'd probably just roll up with Spectral Helix, take these early poison nodes, run a Helix Dagger, and just pray for the best. All in all though, it's a crazy build. The proof is in the pudding, having gone all the Watchstones down to hardcore, farming a ton of Exarchs and Eaters, and I'm probably gonna end up pushing this character at least to level 99 before I transition it over to Ice Trap. So basically right now, if you're on a relatively low budget looking for a super efficient build that's hardcore viable, great defenses, decent clear, good damage, really by definition a well-rounded beast, this is the build for you.